Hey everybody, it's Robert coming to you with another adventure into history, and today we are in Talbot County, Georgia, and I'm here to look at a cemetery that is in the woods out here. This is actually one that Dan and I previously visited here in Talbot County, Georgia, but we did it at night. It was almost night a couple years ago. And I think that it is one that we actually intended to come back to and maybe talk about some more of the history of, but we have yet to make it back. But Cecil had contacted me. He had driven by it, and there was a logging operation that happened around this cemetery. And he said maybe we should check it and make sure that it didn't come into the cemetery. Obviously, all of this is intact and hasn't been logged, but there are a lot of additional graves out here. And there are a lot more graves out here than I realized previously on our late night visit here with Dan. So we're going to revisit this cemetery today and have a look at the graves, but also some of the unmarked graves that are around this place. And I remember visiting the cemetery, like I said, a couple years ago in the evening time with Dan, but I did not realize how expansive it was in the fact that there are a lot of unmarked graves here. This is a very, very big cemetery. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. And I believe we actually know some people who are connected to the people who are buried here. This is sacred to the memory of John H., son of John H. and M.L. Bryan. Died May 19, 1860, aged 9 months, 27 days. Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. And these are amazing monuments out here. And this is what I remember most about the cemetery are the obelisks that are out here. The cemetery obviously dates back to the Plantation era. And you can see that the people who are buried here did have some wealth. A lot of times children who died young would not have such a fine marker as this. And you see it's got a very small box tomb, very small false crypt there, made out of marble with the obelisk sitting on top. The small version of that one over there. This was the same way at one time. You see the marble slab there on top that used to hold an obelisk. You can actually see the sides of the box right there, so we know it was a box. And there's the base, there's more base, and right there. So let's see if we can, well, I think name side is down on this one. This is old damage, probably a tree damage on this. Yeah, unfortunately that one is name side down, and there is no way that I can lift that and be able to read it. That is a very heavy stone. So we're going to go ahead and look at these marked graves first, and then we'll start taking a look at some of the unknowns that are buried here. You can see this one is eventually going to fall. Notice how the box tomb is leaned over already and is at a such an angle that it's going to eventually go ahead and fall over. You know, it's unfortunate. Look at the detail work on this. This is very fine box tomb, very fine marble here. Very intricately carved in the small details, like that right there and there. I don't know if it'll pick up on the camera. Maybe you can see it a little bit better there. Just the little small details in this thing. Just that's what makes these so amazing. Sometimes lots of craftsmanship that may otherwise be overlooked. Asleep in Jesus. Blessed are the dead that die in the Lord. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And again, we've got the side of this box tomb that's just got incredible detail, really. This is in memory of John Stinson, born September 25th, 1776. And he died November 23rd, 1857. So just 3 years prior to that child passing away over there. Very early cemetery here. Definitely in the height of the Plantation era. And the wealth is evident here. They probably had a very large plantation here or very near to here. It's amazing how there used to be so much out here in what is now just woods. And we're actually going to dive into a little bit of that too on this video of some of the remnants we can see. So these are fieldstone stacked box tombs. These are usually pretty early. Generally, we consider these kind of early settlement graves. It'll be interesting if we can see a date on them. They do have headstones at the front and rear. Now, these look like concrete headstones, so I haven't looked at the date yet, but depending on when the date of burial is, I would say that these are newer than the box tomb. This concrete, it seems like it's probably late 1800s, and it's interestingly enough, it's that stamped concrete that we see around. So I definitely think that this was placed here later. This is Woodall, born, and I can't read that date, unfortunately. I'm sure it's online, and we can look it up in post. Something the Lord. So I can't get a date on that. Be interesting to see if that's as early as I would assume that this box tomb would be, or if it's a little bit later and matches the age of this concrete. There's a little concrete footstone too. Got another one of these over here, another box tomb, and just have a look at that, all that stacked rock in there. These always amaze me. You know, I've talked about it before, but you see a box tomb and you think, well, it's kind of primitive because it's just rock, but it took skill to use these rocks that came out of the fields to build something like this, and of course the chimneys as well. This is the issue with these concrete markers, these stamped concrete markers. They don't last. Woodall is the last name. And then I think that says 18, it's either like 1836, 38, 1838 maybe. Could be 50s too. I think that's a 3 though, which if that's 1830s, that would definitely align with the box tomb and early settlement that we've seen so much. But I cannot read it exactly on there, but if it is 1830s, it's interesting to do the comparison between these box tombs here, which is another form of false crypt. In other words, the burial is underground. It's not in the box tomb. It's just a different kind of grave marker. This was a tradition that was brought over from the old world, and I think the proper terminology is cairns over there. So it's a tradition that was brought over from there, and you usually see them pretty early on here. But to see these variations of false tombs, and then see the later marble false tomb over there, which the purpose is essentially the same. It's an interesting comparison as time went on back then. Of course, it'd be even more so if I could read the dates. And I have no cell phone service out here, so I cannot look it up right now. So now we need to dive into some of the unmarked graves here. Now, when Cecil had contacted me about this, he had said that It looked like they got really close to the cemetery, and that's not meaning these marked graves. It's meaning the graves that we cannot see right off, or maybe we can see them, but they may not be seen by others right off. And it doesn't look like they actually breached into the cemetery. Surely we can see these right here. That is a big indention right there. You see that? I hope you can see that one, because if there's ever been an indention someone would be able to see on video, it should certainly be that one, because that is big. And then another one right there. And there's actually 3 graves here. There's indention, fieldstone, and fieldstone, and another big indention right there. That is crazy how deep that hole is. But I don't believe, looking at what I'm seeing, they flagged off the cemetery. So I don't believe they actually did breach the perimeter of the cemetery. I'm not seeing any kind of evidence of any other burials outside of these woods. I don't see any indentions or field stones that look like they were misplaced. And you know, when we see this logging that happens around cemeteries, to note, there have been lots of cemeteries that were destroyed by logging around here and across the state. And it used to be an unfortunate but common occurrence. In fact, a friend of mine's father was one of the people who, at least down in like the areas of Stewart County, who helped stop that destruction from happening. So it used to be more common. Not so much nowadays, more, and it is illegal to destroy a cemetery. But that's why it's so important to document them and, you know, keep a check on them, because if they go undocumented and unknown and they're not checked on, then you would never know if it got erased. So that's another reason that we do what we do with the documentation aspect. You think and assume and hope that a cemetery will, you know, always be left alone, but accidents happen. And when I talk about loggers destroying cemeteries, I don't want to give the wrong impression that we think that the logging industry is the enemy of this sort of thing. I know people who are in this industry, and I respect the logging industry, but accidents do happen. We've documented several. We've documented some that were recently destroyed. So it's always just good to keep a check on our historic sites. Unmarked grave, just an indention. Or marked grave, but unknown, with fieldstone there and fieldstone there. So we don't know who's buried in these unmarked graves. With the date range, you know, obviously this was back in the plantation era. There could very well be burials of people who were enslaved. We don't know that for sure, because we don't know who's buried here. And, you know, people who were not enslaved would be buried in a similar manner. It all depended on how much money you had. But many times, in cases like this, these are burials of people who were enslaved. There are a lot of them out here. I should probably do a count as we do this video. So let's do that. And y'all at home can keep me right on my numbers. I might get mixed up. And before we actually start our counting of it, I need to point out this box tomb right here. First of all, look at the way it is shaped. It's almost kind of a U in the center. That's because an indention has formed underneath this box tomb, and the tomb itself is sank into the ground. But this is another testament to the skill that it took to stack these rocks, because look at how, even though it's sunk in, look at how everything has stayed together. Even though it's got that big dip in the middle. There are unmarked graves everywhere out here, and it's going to be kind of difficult to keep a count on everything, because they are here They're everywhere out here. They are really everywhere out here. I'm going to do my best though, and let's go. Oh look, there's a brick tomb right here. Now this is a newer grave, interestingly enough, because this brick is not. So actually might. Okay, that's a fingerprint in this brick here. I was going to say this brick isn't Plantation era, but this is Plantation era brick. It's very, very good Plantation era brick though. Usually the Plantation era brick we see is a lot rougher than this, but we can tell that it is because none of the bricks are uniform, but it's very smooth, it's very well fired. But that is a thumbprint in there. You see that? That is where someone picked it up while it was still wet before they fired it. So that's really amazing to see that. That is, I mean, you know, just touching that somebody else touched many years ago. And, you know, it's probably an enslaved person that touched that right there, who was making brick on the plantation. So I'm going to go back to the back row. Maybe. I don't know where I should really start on counting these, but we've got 1, 2, 3. Maybe I should just point them out and y'all at home should count them, because I'm going to lose track. But we're at 4 right there. It's number 4. 5, didn't even see it, didn't form an indention. But that's a planted rock, so a way we can tell the difference between a fieldstone that's just here and a fieldstone that's marking a grave is this one is obviously not placed like a natural rock. This is buried in the ground upright and is marking a grave right there. Also, if you notice, it is in row, because it may seem like, you know, all of these unmarked graves are just kind of scattered through here, but they are in rows. Look at that right there. And follow me up. See, there's another one. It's an indention and another one. So there's a grave. That's number 5. 5. We've got 6 and 7. 7 right there. 8. Right here. There's a fieldstone and an indention. And this is why the rule of thumb for telling how many graves in a cemetery is to multiply what you can see by 3. And it sounds excessive, but look at that fieldstone that I almost just missed over there until I stepped on it. So you got to think, and when we get kind of spread out in these rows, that, you know, we're missing those burials in between. Like right here, for example, we see this one. We see this fieldstone here. There is a space right here. There's no indention that's formed, but that doesn't mean that there's not a grave there. Not every grave forms an indention. The indention is formed when the wooden casket and the body completely, you know, goes away and leaves a void in the ground, and the grave sinks down. But in some cases, these graves were rocked up or bricked up above the burial, and that will keep that indention from forming. Kind of a vault situation that'll keep it from forming. So I think we were at 5, 6, 7. And the problem is where I'm going to get really mixed up on counting these is there's 8 and 9 right there in this kind of middle row behind that box tomb that's going to form the U. So it's 8 and 9. And I may get my numbers out of whack here in a minute as we keep going. So I'll trust y'all at home to help me keep count. So would that be number 10? Fieldstone headstone and fieldstone footstone. Let's take a closer look here. This Okay, that almost looked engraved for a minute. I don't think it is. If we were at 10, this is 11. Here, indention. See, I don't see anything right here, but there's a grave here. This is the footstone. That would be 12. We're still going. We're still going, and I'm not seeing any, but that's why we use the ×3, because maybe there's 1, 2, 3 burials in this space right here. Look at this big fieldstone here marking a grave. We would think this one would be situated at the foot of the grave, but it's a big one, like you would think would be at the head of the grave, but it drops off over there. We'll talk about that in a moment too. I've lost count. I've lost count already. I think that, I don't know, were we at 12? I don't know, but there's another one. This is where you guys have to pick up, start counting after me. There's another one right there. See, big fieldstones. It does not stop. It keeps going. And I've thoroughly lost count. There's one there. There's one there. Here, that's an indention. But behind it, there's another one. Look at that fieldstone right there. My God, there are so many graves out here. There's a footstone. And there's a headstone covered in moss, so it's bright for us. Here, look. Fieldstone headstone, fieldstone footstone. Oh no, wait, so this is a headstone right here, and this must be a child back here. Look at the small size between these two footstones, or fieldstones. So there's one there, and there's one there. That's not a very big space. That's a grave of the size of a child. And there are so many out here. I've seen this before. We've documented so many cemeteries. And I've been to this cemetery before, and I did not realize how many graves that there were out here. Of course, we came at night before, but even as many as I've seen, I'm getting amazed by the sheer number of burials out here. So we've got another one right here. Then this tree has fallen. This is natural fall. Behind it is another one. And it keeps going. I just stepped in an indention right here. It's an indention right there where that holly's poking out from under this fallen pine tree. And I didn't realize it went this far this way. So this is kind of where it gets a little bit hard to tell. And we hope that they didn't accidentally get into it. There's another one here on the other side of the downed pine tree. Fieldstone. Fieldstone. On the other side, there's a fieldstone. All right, now remind me where we were at. We're back here somewhere. Okay, I think we were over here. I think that was the last stone I pointed at, and there's another grave right here. So we'll kind of try to walk this second row. I already pointed out that one over there. So we're on the second row now. And I'll try not to keep it in line. So I don't see anything out here, but so we've got this big space between what I can see and what I can see over there. And there may not be graves here, but there might be graves here. You know, I didn't know that one was there until I tripped over it. That's a grave. That's an indention. This is a grave. That's an indention. And if I've ever got doubts about whether it's actually a grave or not, you know, when we see these indentions, fieldstone proves it. Sometimes fieldstones get buried and covered up too, so they're harder to see. Indention, fieldstone, fieldstone. I'll actually be interested myself when I release this video to be able to look down in the comments and see how many graves there are out here, because I've lost count, and I'm finding them, so many of them. And it's like I said, even though I've done this so long and been in these places so much, it's still blowing my mind right now to see all of these out here. And I know I'm missing some. Oh, there's another whole row right here. So we've kind of covered this area up to the U-shaped box tomb. But if we go ahead and jump over to the side of this box tomb, there is a fieldstone marker here. Now we got to turn back around and just check out this row. So there's indention right there. And then look at this little row right here. Well, for one, we've got fieldstone marking a grave right there, but look at this row. Here we got that one. This one. And then this one. Now, as far as the discussion as to whether these are burials of enslaved people or not, we do, so we know that it's during this time period, frequently black and white burials were kept separate. They were segregated. We see that a lot at the old churches. So we see the old church graveyards where you have a spot for the white church members, and then oftentimes down kind of on the side of the hill, that's where you find the burial of enslaved people, if it dates back that far. And then a lot of times that continues in two separate cemeteries. So that being said, whether we're questioning whether these are the burials of enslaved people or not, they're very, very close to the family cemetery, and that may not, you know, it doesn't mean that they're not, but it would be more unusual to be this so very close to the, you know, the plantation owners' graves here. So I don't know for sure, and that's, you know, unless it is just written in some long lost history book, we probably wouldn't know. And of course, we're getting into the early settlement tombs, and these would not be typical of burials of people who were enslaved in this time period. That being said, I have seen a box tomb marking a grave in a cemetery that was the burial ground for enslaved people, but their descendants continued to bury them thereafter, and we did see a box tomb in it one time. I don't think that that's the case, of course, with these. The Woodall family were not African Americans or people who were enslaved. So I don't think that's the case with those, but just something else to think about as we dissect these old, you know, antebellum era cemeteries such as this. And we, you know, always have to think about all aspects of it. If we can't document the plantation owners and without documenting the people who were enslaved, and vice versa, we can't document the people who were enslaved without documenting the plantation owners. It's all an interwoven story in the history of this area. And on top of that, no grave. It doesn't matter what your status was in life, enslaved, free, or black or white. It doesn't matter. These are all important sites, both historically, but also is that they were all people. And all cemeteries, no matter who's buried there, whether it's just two field stones and a complete unknown or a fine marble tomb, all cemeteries and all graves deserve the respect that we like to see here, but also from a historical standpoint as well. So there's big dynamics in this. So we're coming up on another row. So I don't see any more burials out here. We're coming up on another row here, and I'm sorry if I've confused you on the count, but we've got one there, and here, then an indention. This is an indention. And then I don't see anything throughout this area, so we step back over here and we get a grave that's marked with fieldstone there, and a grave that is marked with fieldstone there. Now I believe that these are footstones. No, actually not. Okay, not entirely sure. These may be headstones. But so we've got two Two more back here, fieldstone, and a fieldstone. And then we've got back here as well. And these would actually be the footstones here. So these are lower too. So these are definitely footstones, and those are definitely headstones right there. So back there, those may just be headstones. Just want to check these, make sure there's nothing engraved, because every now and again you'll find an engraved fieldstone. It's very rare, but every now and again you'll find it. So I think that we have found all of the readily visible unmarked graves out here. And before we go, there's one more aspect of this place I want to point out and talk about. That is right back here, and it is this old road bed. This is the original road that came through here. So as we came to the cemetery today, we came from the modern road. You can see the Jeep over there. We came from the modern road and stepped in. This was the old road. And you see this is a well-defined, very old roadbed right here. You know, you can tell the age of the roadbed from how low it is too, because every time, of course, they'd cut a road in here, then every time it would wash out, they'd smooth it flat, smooth it flat. So we've talked about that before in Rough Edge, where those are some of the oldest roads in the county and follow the original paths and are cut so deep. This was a very old road too. You know, you can see how deep it is cut as it came through. And this road, the width of it, looks like this road could have lasted up until the early automobile age. Sometimes we'll see old road beds and they were clearly more of a wagon trail. So they are more narrow. This one's very wide. Not that they didn't cut wide roads back in those days either, especially if it was a well-traveled road. And this one certainly looks like it was a well-traveled road. So Stinsons and Woodalls buried here. This is a plantation for the Stinsons or the Woodalls would have been nearby, and this family may be interconnected. Amazing historic site, off in the woods in the middle of nowhere. But we see, I mean, how many people was that? I don't know my count, but this is a lot of people buried out here in an area today that's only visited by deer hunters and people in the timber industry. And when you would first come up to this cemetery, and this is what we did on, I think, on the video where Dan and I came out here, it was dark, we couldn't see some of these finer details, but we only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 graves out here. And what 50? 60 graves out here if we do the whole multiplication thing, because there's an indention that I did not notice before. Maybe I did. Actually, I did notice those. I take that back. There's graves everywhere out here. And this is not a big space. You know, if we look at it from corner to corner, we can see where it was marked off with ribbons. So they knew it was here. They knew to look out for it. And we just kind of look around and see that this really is not that big a space. But there are a lot of burials here. And it's an amazing sight, just for anything, if not just for the sheer number of burials out here. And as we walk out, I can show you the difference in the road beds. This is a newer road. It's ditched and it's built up. And we saw the well-defined roadbed back there that was a very historic road. And so I want you to remember what that looked like and how deep it was, and then compare it to this. Now this road is built up. It's also ditched on either side. So we can see that this is a newer road than that one back there. And that's, again, how we can kind of tell some of the dates of the roads. Deeper the road, usually the older it is. And this road has a little bit of different construction. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thanks for joining me out here at this historic cemetery. Always, if it's ever in question, always good to come out and check on these cemeteries and make sure that they are still in good shape, protected. Again, no disrespect to the timber industry, but it's just something worth checking on, and certainly worth a return visit. And hopefully one day we can return for another time with Dan and maybe learn a little bit more history about this place. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time on another adventure into history.